Yes, Vimalji, please start.
Good evening, everybody. On behalf of the Indian section, I welcome you all to the Friday evening program, the book study of the Mahatma letters. Let us all join together in the universal invocation. O hidden light, vibrant in every act. O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May all who feel themselves as one with thee know they are therefore one with every other. So today we have the continuation of letters 127 to 129. Today we'll be continuing letter number 128. And Vibhaji doesn't need an introduction, so I would request Vibhaji to start the session today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vimalji, and namaste. Good evening, dear brothers and sisters. So we are studying these letter numbers, the chronological letter numbers 127, 128, and 129. And in our last session, we have completed the letter number 127, and some parts of this letter 128 is what we were studying. In this letter number 128, Mahatma K.H. he has written to AP Sinnet in the summer of 1884. So just a brief recap of what we have completed. In this letter, Mahatma K.H. has most strongly, he has protested against publishing his letters, which he wrote to Mr. Sinnet and Mr. Hume. And he explains why they must not be published. Although earlier he had permitted some parts of it to be published in Mr. Sinnet's book, Esoteric Buddhism. Now, the way the letters were written, they were not on any continuous topic. They did not cover any topic comprehensively. And the answers were given to disjointed queries, which were raised by Sinnet randomly. And also, Mahatmaji mentioned that from different standpoints, they were necessarily imperfect. So why they were imperfect, this we have seen in the last session. And therefore, publishing them, it would not do any good either to Mr. Sinnet or to the other people. Instead, people would become more confused and they would heap more criticism upon the heads of the masters. And this would definitely have a very retarding influence on human progress and the Theosophical Society. So, this experimental part publication of letters in the esoteric Buddhism, so it was like an experiment which Mahatma Ji had carried out, that also had proved quasi-disastrous. He uses the term quasi-disastrous, means which appeared disastrous, but of course there was some good in that. So that part publication of the letters in this book, Esoteric Buddhism, it also could not enable anyone to arrive at even a close approximation of the esoteric philosophy. Okay, and therefore it was clear that only a person who had passed at least the third initiation, only he was capable of writing comprehensively upon these subjects. So now let us see what Mahatma Ji mentions further in the letter, and I'm going to share my slides with you. This is the letter 128, and I think we have completed till here that instead of doing any good, means publication of the letter, instead of doing any good, it would only bring criticism upon the heads of the masters and would have a retarding influence. That was the reason Mahatma Ji prohibited publication of the letters. Then he tells Sinnet that leave to the secret doctrine the task of avenging you. My letters must not be published in the manner you suggest. So we know that the writing of the secret doctrine, it had already commenced in 1884. And this was intended to put together all the teachings given till then. They wanted to put all the teachings in a consistent and a systematic philosophy, in a systematic way. So, secret doctrine, it would set right all the vital errors, all the gaps, or all the omissions which were there in the previous published works by other authors. So that was quite a confusion for the students of theosophy, and the secret doctrine hoped to bridge all those gaps. But the letters itself, the letters written by the Mahatmas, those letters itself, they were not to be published. Mahatma Ji says, but on the contrary, if you save Jwalkul trouble, copies of some should be sent to the literary committee at Adyar, about which Damodar has written to you, so that with the assistance of SYK Chari, Jwalkul, Subbarao, and the secret committee from which HPB was purposely excluded by us, to avoid new suspicions and calumnies, they might be able to utilize the information for the realization of the object with which the committee was started, as explained by Damodar in the letter written by him under orders. So, a secret literary committee that had been formed at Adyar. It was formed at the behest of the masters, and the work which was entrusted to this committee, which Damodar Mavlankar had explained in some other letter. So the work which was entrusted to this committee, it required to utilize the teachings given by the masters. And for this, Jwalkul, who was a chela of Master KH, he would have to transmit some of the letters by occult means to Adyar. So what that meant, that he would have to spend considerable psychic and spiritual force. Now, Sinnet could save Jwalkul this trouble by sending the copies of some of the letters to the committee in Adyar. And the masters had purposely excluded HPB from this whole activity to spare her any more troubles. She was already being targeted by the people who were accusing her of producing fraudulent paranormal phenomena, and they were criticizing her for her opinions and attitude towards Christianity, which they would consider very inflammatory or very hostile. Further, the letter says, it is neither new Kiddle developments that I seek to avoid, nor criticism directed against my personality, which indeed can hardly be reached. But I rather try to save yourself and society from new troubles, which would be serious this time. So we have read about this Kiddle incident in the previous letters. It was about plagiarism charges on Mahatma KH. And those charges were made by an American educator, Henry Kiddle, for quoting part of his speech on spiritual ideas in one of the letters written by Mahatma KH to Sinnet, which subsequently got published in Sinnet's book, The Occult World. So although the real cause of this whole incident, accusing the Mahatma of plagiarism, the real cause for that was lack of knowledge about mental impressions. How Mahatma Ji was able to get those exact same words which Henry Kiddle had used. So they did not know how mental impressions work. And also they did not know the occult process of precipitation of letters. In a later letter, when Mahatma KH explained why this Kiddle incident happened, he has explained the process of precipitation of letters. So that was not in the knowledge of these general people, and that is why this whole incident of plagiarism took place, whereas it was not actually any plagiarism. But now, in the present context, Mahatma Ji was prohibiting publication of his letters not to avoid similar such controversy. In fact, he says that his personality can indeed hardly be reached. Now, this is a very important point he makes. His personality can hardly be reached. What does this mean? On the physical plane, any words which are uttered, praise or criticism or any other emotion, they are directed to the personality, that is the lower quaternary. lower quaternary, which is the Sthula Sharir, the Linga Sharir, and the Prana and the Kam principles. But the masters, the great ones, they have already transcended the personality. They are conscious in their individuality, that is the higher self, Atma, Buddhi, Manas. Although it is true, they still possess a physical body, but their will is merged with the divine will for which they work. And hence they are beyond the reach of any praise or any criticism. Personality is there only to be made into a fit instrument through which they carry out the work of the divine will. So, we as aspirants, this should be our aim. The aspirant, he should become conscious in his higher self, the immortal higher self. And he should realize that he is not the personality. And at the same time, the personality, it has to be purified to be made into a fit instrument for the higher self. And then praise or criticism, it will in no way affect the aspirant. Therefore, Mahatmaji says that his personality can hardly be reached. He was simply trying to save Sinnet and the Theosophical Society from getting into new and serious trouble by having these letters not published. Further, he says the letters, in short, were not written for publication or public comment upon them, but for private use, and neither M nor I would ever give our consent to see them thus handled. Now, when Mahatma KH has so categorically mentioned not to publish the letters, then naturally the question arises that why were these letters published? Why do we have them now before us? So the answer to this question is found in the introduction given in that book, Mahatma Letters to AP Sinnet by A.T. Barker. In that, he has mentioned, Mr. Barker, he has mentioned that AP Sinnet, he passed away in 1921. And the letters which were sent to him, the letters written by the Mahatmas, they came in the custody of Madam Maud Hoffman. She was the person who executed the will of AP Sinnet. So at the suggestion of Mr. Barker, she allowed him this privilege of undertaking this complete responsibility of transcription, arrangement, and publication of these letters. And the first edition of this book, it got published in 1923. Now, it is not that Mr. Barker was not aware that the Mahatmas have forbidden publication. He was very much aware that the publication of these letters was forbidden by the Mahatmas. So he undertook this activity with an even more keen sense of responsibility. He acknowledges that, no doubt, at that time, these letters were not intended for publication. But, so he's adding that, but it may also fairly be assumed that the present impasse in the affairs of the society was not anticipated either. So this is the duration around 1921, 22, 23. So during that time, there was an impasse in the affairs of the society, meaning a deadlock kind of situation. There was disagreement, and so no progress was being made in the Theosophical Society. There was so much controversy in regard to what was and what was not the original teachings of the masters. And it was felt at that time almost impossible to arrive at the facts or even to come to a trustworthy opinion upon the subjects which had such a far-reaching effect. Just by studying the edited versions of the book extracts. So those far-reaching subjects, they were the cosmogony, the occult constitution of man and universe, the evolution of man and universe. Teachings on all this was given in the letters. So just by reading a book edited by some other person, the people could not could not be sure that they could come to the truth. So therefore, at such a time, publication of the words of its own teachers, of its own masters, it could do nothing less but serve the highest interest of the society. And the motto of that society, it is, there is no religion higher than truth. And to arrive at the truth, what could be better than to publish the words of its own teachers? So the TS members and also the world at large, they would be enabled to study the truth for themselves. The truths regarding the masters and their doctrines, which was set forth in these letters, and it was signed in the hands of the Mahatmas themselves. So this was the aim, and this is the reason why the Mahatma letters got published. Now, in this letter, Mahatma Ji mentions the last point here on the slide. As regards your first letter, DJK, that is Jwalkul, has been instructed to attend to it. In such delicate matters, I am still less competent to give advice than to satisfy aspiring chelas of the LCH sort. LCH is Laura C. Holloway. I am afraid the poor dear Mrs. Holloway is showing her white teeth and would hardly be found now a charming companion. So, Sinnet had perhaps written to the Mahatma KH previously about seeking chelaship. He was very interested in becoming a chela of the Mahatma. But in fact, very few souls are fitted for the path of chelaship. See, this occult path, this path of initiation and chelaship, it is kind of a forced spiritual growth. It is a very perilous path, full of occult risks. And Jwalkul, who himself was a chela of Mahatma KH, he would know what exactly are the requirements and what exactly are the dangers on this path very well. So that is why he was given the responsibility to explain these things to Mr. Sinnet and to dissuade him from seeking chelaship. No, Sinnet was not ready. So until he was fully ready, it was very dangerous, very risky to be embarking on this path. And see how humbly Mahatma KH has mentioned that he is more competent to accept an chela rather than trying to explain to him the dangers and trying to dissuade him. So Mahatma KH is saying he's more competent to accept a chela and give him occult teachings rather than explaining to dissuade him from becoming a chela. So he's leaving that task to Jwalkul. Okay. And Laura C. Holloway, she was also an aspiring chela. She was put on probation. She was an American journalist, a clairvoyant, who had come from America to meet the Theosophists in Europe. And for a time being, she also stayed in the Sinnet household. She had very high spiritual ambitions. Now, see, she had so many qualities that she could easily move ahead on the path of chelaship, having this clairvoyance and being sensitive to these higher forces. But she got into the trap of channeling the elementaries, which she mistook, and Mr. Sinnet also mistook, that the Mahatma is speaking through her. So such are the risks on this path. And that is why Mahatma KH is mentioning that she would hardly now be found a charming companion. Further, Mahatma Ji mentions, it is Fern, Murad Ali, Bishan Lal and other wrecks over again. Why shall would-be chelas with such intense personalities enforce themselves within the enchanted and dangerous circle of probation? Pardoning my short letter, I am very busy just now with the coming New Year, KH. So all these names which are mentioned, Fern, Murad Ali, Bishan Lal, they were all aspiring to become chelas. They were the early members of the Theosophical Society. And ultimately, they became miserable failures and wrecks when they were put on testing during the mandatory probationary period. During the probation, a would-be chela, he is variously tested. He's tested by putting temptations in his path, by illusions, by appearances. And this happens in his day-to-day life. So if he intensely clings to his lower nature, clings to his personal self, then the probationary tests, they are a clear and present danger to him. He is clearly not prepared for higher life and for chelaship. Higher life means letting go of the personality. That is the first thing which needs to be done. So, whatever happened with these people, their tests and their probations and how they failed, all that, an article to this intent, it was written by Madame Blavatsky, and that article is titled Chelas and Le Chelas. I'm sure most of you must have read this article. If not, please read it definitely. So we are warned what are the things we have to guard against on this path. That article was published as a supplement to the Theosophist of July 1883. So with that, we come to the end of this letter 128. And now we'll move on to a very short letter number 129. So this letter, it is written again by Mahatma KH to AP Sinnet in August of 1884. Now AP Sinnet, he had of late been fighting doubts. And in part, these doubts had been brought about by his own conviction that the Mahatma had indeed taken possession of Laura Holloway and had spoken through her. And then the Mahatma, in another letter, he mentioned that this had never taken place. So this current letter, chronological letter number 129, it speaks about these incidents. And it also speaks about the portrait by Herr Schmischen. Herr is just a title in German. So Herr Schmischen. So the details of that portrait, we will see about that when we come to that part in the letter. The letter begins with, "My good friend, Shakespeare said truly that our doubts are traitors. Why should you doubt or create in your mind ever-growing monsters? A little more knowledge in occult laws would have set your mind at rest long ago, avoided many a tear to your gentle lady and pang to yourself." So doubts here have rightly been called traitors. Who is a traitor? A traitor is somebody who will betray, who will deceive. And exactly like that, the doubts also mislead. They mislead by causing us to lose trust and faith in the actual truth. And moreover, these doubts are created, they are monsters which are created by our own mind. Now in 1884, Laura Holloway, she traveled to Europe to meet Madame Blavatsky and the other Theosophists. And then she stayed for a while with the Sinnets. Sinnet, he knew that Mrs. Holloway was a chela of Master KH, and he became very excited. He was excited at the possibility of having a communication with the master. He was always interested in directly speaking to the masters, but the masters communicated through letters. So he thought that he could communicate with the master through Mrs. Holloway, independently of Madame Blavatsky. Now, Mrs. Holloway, as we saw, she was a young chela, she was inexperienced, and she was on probation. So she began to channel the masters for Sinnet. This is what she thinks. But we do not know what kind of elementaries had caught hold of her. Okay, because Mahatma Ji says that this communication never took place. He never contacted anyone through Mrs. Holloway. So Madame Blavatsky, she knew about these dangers and she thoroughly disapproved of this behavior. But Mr. Sinnet assumed it was due to jealousy. Now you look at the chain of doubts. First of all, doubting that the master spoke through Mrs. Holloway, and then doubting HPB, that she is jealous, that is why she is disapproving. So one doubt is leading to another. And then HPB, she insisted that Mrs. Holloway should leave the Sinnets and she should go back and stay with the Arundales, which eventually she did. Then in July 1884, the master sent a letter to Mr. Sinnet. That was the letter number 126, the one which was taken by Pradeep ji before I started 127. So in that letter 126, he said, clearly he mentioned that he had not communicated with anybody through Mrs. Holloway. And in that letter, he mentioned how 1,001 Furies keep watch over the adamantine gates and entrance to the path of occult science. Now, these furies in that letter he has clearly mentioned. The foremost furies are doubt, skepticism, scorn, ridicule, envy, and finally temptation. So, doubt and skepticism are the foremost furies. But Sinnet, he was so overcome by doubts that he distrusted the bona fides of that letter 126. And at that time, he became quite convinced that it was a fabrication of Madame Blavatsky. You see to what extent the mind goes when it is under doubt. He's thinking that it was a fabrication by Madame Blavatsky. And Mahatma K.H. says, if Sinnet had even a little more knowledge about occult laws, his mind would never have raised such doubts, which caused so much pain not only to himself but also his wife. For this, Mahatma K.H. is saying that, know then that even the chelas of the same Guru are often made to separate and keep apart for long months while the process of development is going on, simply on account of two contrary magnetisms that, attracting each other, prevent mutual and individualized development in some one direction. There is no offense meant or even possible. So this was the occult law, which, of course, Sinnet was not aware of it. This was the occult law. Sinnet was seeking chelaship of Mahatma K.H. and Mrs. Holloway was already a probationary chela. So while the occult psychic faculties of the would-be chelas are still developing, they are often made to keep apart from each other. Why they are kept apart? On account of the two contrary magnetisms of the two individual chelas that attract each other and prevent mutual and individualized development in some particular direction. So now what are these contrary magnetisms? How they enable or how they hinder the development of chela in some particular direction? These are all the things of occult laws about which Sinnet was ignorant. Even we are not conversant with these laws. But knowing these laws fully well, Mahatma K.H. would definitely never use the psychic magnetism of Mrs. Holloway to communicate with Mr. Sinnet. Because Mahatma K.H., he knows the truth, he knows the laws, that how these laws work, the magnetisms work, and how they could hamper the growth of the chelas. So this ignorance, Mahatma K.H. is mentioning, last point, this ignorance has caused of late immense suffering on all sides. When shall you trust implicitly in my heart, if not in my wisdom, for which I claim no recognition on your part? You see how half knowledge is dangerous? It is positively dangerous. Such ignorance is bound to cause pain and suffering, as was happening in this case with Sinnet. The best cure against it is to have total faith, total trust in the word of the Guru, in the word of the Master. They are masters of wisdom. They know the great occult laws. And whatever they do in the interest of humanity, in the interest of mankind. Now, this faith and trust we must have on them. But Sinnet, being from the Western society, he was lacking in it. That is why all these doubts, the chain of doubt, the network, the mesh of doubts had begun. So Mahatma Ji says, it is extremely painful to see you wandering about in a dark labyrinth created by your own doubts, every issue of which moreover you close with your own hands. This is what doubts do to us. They create a dark labyrinth. It is a complex network of ignorant thoughts in which we get caught. Ignorance is darkness. We try to close one doubt by our own ignorant thought. And that leads us deeper and deeper into this maze of doubt. Like Sinnet, he thought that Mahatma Ji communicated through Holloway, and when he denied it, he's thinking that HPB is fabricating the letter. So one doubt leading to another, going deeper and deeper into this mesh of doubt. So even an aspirant, a sincere aspirant and a devoted theosophist like AP Sinnet, he became ensnared in this network of this dark network of his own doubts. He became utterly closed to the spiritual influence of the master. Even though master wants to help him, he is unable to do anything. And this is extremely painful for the master to see. Master says, I believe you are now satisfied with my portrait made by Herr Schmischen and as dissatisfied with the one you have. Yet all are like in their way. Only while the others are the productions of chelas, the last one was painted with M's hand on the artist's head and often on his arm. KH. So regarding the portrait of the Mahatmas, many of you would have seen it, the people who are there in the ES. So Colonel Olcott, he had a profile portrait of Mahatma M, which was made for him sometime earlier by someone who Olcott thought is not an occultist. He didn't know that he's a chela or an occultist. Now, that portrait which Olcott had, its likeness to the Mahatma was very true. It was unquestionable. But Olcott felt that the face, it did not glow. What he called, the soul splendor, which lights up the adept's countenance. So that glow was not there on the face in the portrait. And he wanted a better portrait. So he was approaching many artists in London, but none other portrait was better than which he already had. And then at that time, this person, Herr Schmischen, he was a well-known German painter and he lived in London and he joined the Theosophical Society. So he agreed to have an inspirational test tried. Now, what is this inspirational test? We'll see. The test was that this photograph of the master, it was given to Herr Schmischen. And no suggestion was made to him that how he should make the portrait. He completed the portrait in 3 weeks. And during that time, he was visited by Colonel Olcott 4 times and by Colonel Olcott and Madame HPB once. So when they visited him, the mental image of the master, it was vividly impressed upon the artist's brain, Herr Schmischen's brain, mentally impressed. Okay. Now this resulted in a perfect portrait of Master M, as if it had been painted from life. So Schmischen gave the face a full front view and it appeared as if into the eyes he poured a flood of life, as if, there is an indwelling soul. And it clearly appeared the work of a genius. It was the proof of the fact of thought transference, because that image of the master had been mentally impressed on his brain. So Herr Schmischen, after that, he also painted a portrait of Mahatma KH. That portrait was painted from a crude sketch, which Mr. Sinnet had. Sinnet had received that sketch of the portrait of Mahatma KH. Sinnet received a copy of the portrait which Herr Schmischen made, which was far superior than the sketch he had. So Madame Blavatsky and Mrs. Holloway and also a number of other theosophists, they were present in the studio in the first sitting of the portrait, when the first sitting of the portrait was being done by Herr Schmischen. So at that time, these people, many other theosophists were present. And it was Master M's hand that was guiding the hand of Herr Schmischen, who was making the portrait. Now, Mrs. Holloway, she was a clairvoyant. She was able to see the outline of a person standing and guiding this hand. So, the presence of the masters, it was evident to Mrs. Holloway. And on prompting by Madame Blavatsky, she spoke about it and described that whole event to everyone who was present. Therefore, here Mahatma KH is saying in this letter that while the other portraits, they are productions of the chelas, this last one, the portrait of Mahatma KH, it was painted with Mahatma M's hand on the artist's head and often on his arm. So it was true. It was actually seen, witnessed by Mrs. Holloway and, of course, by Madame Blavatsky. Then Mahatma KH tells Sinnet, pray, remain for the Wednesday meeting if you feel you are not to leave the inner circle. Otherwise, go. Remembering my friendship had warned you. Only avoid, if you do, hurting the feelings of those who sin through an excess, not lack of devotion. So this is a reference to Madame Blavatsky and Colonel Olcott. Master urged Sinnet. He told Sinnet to attend the meeting so that he would continue to be part of the inner circle. The inner circle, which was formed in London by Madame Blavatsky, selected group of very few members who would continue to receive the inner teachings, the higher teachings from the inner founders, with Madame Blavatsky as the messenger. Master also advised Sinnet that if he wished, he could leave, but he should not hurt the feelings of the outer founders by doubting their truthfulness or their integrity. HPB and Colonel Olcott, they may have made errors, but that was due to their over enthusiasm, never due to their lack of devotion. So, with these words, we come to an end of this letter, letter number 129. And thank you very much. I will now request Sister Meenakshi ji to give us the translation in Hindi.
नमस्ते सभी को। थैंक यू सिस्टर। आज हम लेटर नंबर 128 का उर्वरित भाग और 129 ले रहे हैं। क्रोनोलॉजिकल लेटर नंबर 128 में हमने पिछली बार देखा था कि मास्टर कहते हैं कि सीनेट से कहते हैं कि आपके पास जो पत्र में दी गई जटिल सामग्री है जिसे जानबूझकर अस्पष्ट रखा गया था, उसे प्रकाशित करने से और ज्यादा उलझने बढ़ेगी। आपको और दूसरों को लाभ होने के बजाय उससे आप ज्यादा मुश्किल में आएंगे, जिससे मास्टर्स के ऊपर आलोचना होगी और इस तरह टीएस को की प्रगति को अवरुद्ध करेगी। इसीलिए मैं आपकी नई कल्पना का पुरजोर विरोध करता हूँ। आपके बदले में यह कार्य सीक्रेट डॉक्ट्रिन पर छोड़ दे। मेरे पत्रों को आपके द्वारा सुझाए गए तरीके से प्रकाशित नहीं किया जाना चाहिए, बल्कि कुछ प्रतियां अड्यार के लिटरेरी कमेटी को भेज दे, ताकि एसटीके चार्या, ज्वालपुल, सुब्बाराव और सीक्रेट कमेटी, जिसमें से एचपीबी को हमने जानबूझकर बाहर रखा था ताकि नए संदेह और बदनामी से बचा जा सके, उस सीक्रेट कमेटी की सहायता से दी गई जानकारी का उपयोग जिस उद्देश्य के लिए उस कमेटी का गठन हुआ था उसके लिए करने में सक्षम होंगे, जैसे कि आपको हमारे आदेशों के तहत दामोदर लिखित पत्र में बताया गया है। मैं न तो हाल ही के किडल घटना से बचना चाहता हूँ, न ही मुझ पर की आलोचना से, जो वास्तव में मुझ तक शायद ही पहुंचती है, बल्कि मैं आपको और सोसाइटी को नई मुसीबतों से बचाने की कोशिश कर रहा हूँ, जो इस बार गंभीर रूप की होगी। पत्रों को निजी उपयोग के लिए लिखे गए थे, न कि प्रकाशन करने या सार्वजनिक टिप्पणियों के लिए, और न तो मास्टर एम और न ही मैं पत्रों को इस तरह से प्रयोग में लाने पर अपनी सहमति देंगे। आगे मास्टर कहते हैं कि जहां तक आपके पहले पत्र का सवाल है, उसे ज्वालपुल को ध्यान देने का निर्देश दिया गया है। ऐसे नाजुक मामलों में मैं लॉरा हॉलोवे जैसे महत्वाकांक्षी चेलों का शंका समाधान करने की तुलना में सलाह देने में अभी भी सक्षम नहीं हूँ। मुझे डर है बेचारी मिसेस हॉलोवे अपना असली रूप दिखा रही है और अब वह शायद ही उपयुक्त सहयोगी होगी। फर्न, मुराद अली, बिशनलाल और उन जैसे अन्य असफल चेला बने हैं। ऐसे प्रबल व्यक्तिमत्व वाले चेला बनने के अभिलाषी मोहजाल करने वाले या मंत्रमुग्ध करने वाले और खतरों भरे घेरे में प्रवेश करने के लिए स्वयं को विवश क्यों करते हैं, ऐसा मास्टर सीनेट से कहते हैं। आगे का पत्र है क्रोनोलॉजिकल लेटर नंबर 129, जो मास्टर के एच एपी सीनेट को लिखते हैं। मास्टर कहते हैं कि मास्टर सिनेट को माय गुड फ्रेंड संबोधित करते हुए कहते हैं कि शेक्सपियर ने ठीक ही कहा है कि शंका विद्रोही होती है। मास्टर कहते हैं कि आप अपने मन में निरंतर बढ़ते हुए शंका के राक्षस क्यों निर्माण कर रहे हो? यदि ऑकल्ट लॉज का ज्ञान होता तो आपका मन शांत रहता और आपको और आपकी पत्नी को दुख और पीड़ा का सामना नहीं करना पड़ता। एक ही गुरु के चेलाओं को कई महीनों तक अलग रखा जाता है जब तक उनकी विकास प्रक्रिया चलती है, क्योंकि दो विपरीत मैग्नेटिज्म वाले चेलाओं के आकर्षण से उनके किसी एक दिशा में आपसी और व्यक्तिगत विकास में बाधा आती है। इसमें कुछ भी गलत होने का इरादा नहीं है या संभावना नहीं। इस बात की अज्ञानता सभी बाजू से दुख का कारण बनी। मेरे ज्ञान पर न सही, लेकिन आप मेरी भावनाओं पर निस्संदेह रूप से कब विश्वास करेंगे? ऐसा मास्टर सिनेट से पूछते हैं। आपके ही द्वारा निर्माण किए गए शंकाओं के घोर भंवरजाल में आपको भटकते हुए देखना बहुत ही कष्टदायक है। मुझे लगता है कि अब आप हर स्कीमैन द्वारा बनाए गए मेरे चित्र से संतुष्ट है और आपके पास जो चित्र है उससे नहीं। फिर भी सभी अपने हिसाब से एक जैसे हैं। बाकी के चित्र चेलो की निर्मित है और अंतिम चित्र को मास्टर एम द्वारा उनका हाथ चित्रकार के मन और बाह पर रखकर चित्रित किया गया। यदि आपको लगता है कि आपको इनर सर्कल नहीं छोड़ना है, तब कृपया बुधवार की मीटिंग में भाग ले, अन्यथा विदा ले। यह याद रखें कि मेरी मित्रता ने आपको आगाह किया था। आप उन लोगों की भावनाओं को ठेस पहुंचाने से बचे जो भक्ति की कमी के कारण नहीं बल्कि अत्याधिकता करते हैं। थैंक यू। नमस्ते।
Thank you, Meenakshi ji, and thank you, Vibha ji, for a very clear and precise exposition. So, before the meeting started, I had asked whether can I share the pictures which were painted
Oh, yes.
of. So I thought, okay, here, let me try.
This letter mentions the portraits painted by Herr Schmischen. And Vimalji has those portraits which he will share with us.
I don't know why it's not showing my. Yeah, here it is. So this is the first portrait, which is Master Maurya. And this, according to what Vibhaji just explained, that there were several visits by Olcott and one visit with HPB where they made a mental impression on the artist of Master Maurya's image. And then the artist painted this photo. Am I right, Vibhaji? This is what you said just now, right?
This is what is mentioned in the letter. I'm
Yeah.
not sure about the portrait which is being shown.
You're not sure about?
I'm not sure about the portrait which is now on the screen.
Okay. Not to worry. Then let me see. The next portrait is going to be the portrait of KH, and so he has this very kindly kind of face, and this was made with Master M's hand on the artist's head or shoulders or something, which is mentioned in this letter. So these are the two portraits of the master. So here they say that he was wearing a fur-lined dress, which you can see that near his neck you can see some kind of a fur lining on that dress. And also I'd like to share that the same artist has also painted Blavatsky. And this is a painting of Blavatsky. Also, there is another remarkable painting of the Jesus. Just this is the last one I'm sharing. But this is so remarkable, done by the same artist. So just wanted to share all these, and then now we open up for Any comments or any other additions, questions?
Madam,
Yes.
Vibhaji, I have a doubt, but Mahatma says that you should not doubt, but still I have a doubt. Mahatma's consent was not there to publish the Mahatma letters to Sinnet,
Yes.
but still after he passed away, the letters with whom it was there, that person published. You said that you told that what is the reason for publishing. Is it okay to publish without consent of masters, or that person had a consent of masters to publish the letters?
We cannot say that the person, Mr. Barker, whether he had the consent of masters. We cannot say that. So, in the introduction, which is given at the starting of that book, Mahatma Letters to AP Sinnet, he has mentioned that he was fully aware that the Mahatmas had mentioned forbidden to publish these letters. And so he was doing it with a keen sense of responsibility because at that time there was total confusion in the society. There were about what were the real teachings, what were the original truths. So, looking at the situation, this decision was taken. He suggested to Madam Maud Hoffman, and she agreed to give these letters to him. So nowhere it is mentioned that the consent was received. That is not mentioned. And we do not know what is the consequence. Now, whatever is the situation, is it a fallout of doing something which was forbidden, or was it a good thing which happened? It brought clarity to the truths. So it is for each one of us to look at the situation and, find out, adjudge
Thank
that.
you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
So at this point, I would only like to mention that now that the letters are published, something which is done cannot be undone. So it is for us to make the most of these teachings and to study them for the purpose it was intended, for our spiritual growth. And we should not take the name of the masters in vain or desecrate their name or these teachings. So that much at least we owe to them.
Thank you. Good. And I think they throw a lot of light on the core teachings of Theosophy. There are clear, many aspects are much clearly written in this. So that itself is important. And you also get a glimpse of what kind of human beings the masters are. You get a very nicely fleshed out feeling of who they are. Otherwise, they would have remained like mythical figures. So now you know how human they are.
Yes.
All the how even they were in how conflicted they were, how they kept developing their ideas and how they were growing with the idea that of the society and developing all that. So it gives you a very alive feeling of what the masters were, the whole
That is
Mahatma.
true.
Madam, one more doubt I have.
Yes.
Mahatma's told Sinnet that you are more intelligence in the lower plane, and in the upper plane, we are still your masters. What does it mean, madam?
So that's what we were just discussing before the start of today's session. See, physical intelligence, that is the lower mind, the logical mind, intelligence of that. So this race, the Caucasian race, the European race, they are the most intelligent on earth at this point in time. But Master says that spiritually, we were, meaning this first race, the first sub-race of the Aryan root race, which is the Hindu race, the race in this Asian subcontinent. They were and they will remain spiritually their superior. So physical intelligence, no doubt they have. And they are superior in it. We can see it is evident even today. The kind of inventions and technology and the present contemporary science which is evolving. So no doubt they are very intelligent. But spiritually, this the first sub-race of the Aryan root race, that is the Hindus, they were and they will always remain spiritually their superior. So that is what is being said even today, that India is emerging as the spiritual guru, spiritual world guru. That is what is happening.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you.
We still have 5 minutes, 5, 6 minutes.
Yes, these were short letters, so we finished quickly, and it gives us an opportunity to discuss. These letters have so many things in them. It is good
You
that
must have gone through, sorry, you must have gone through Joy Mill's commentaries also. So, how do you find those commentaries as compared to these books?
to be frank, Vimalji, I have not read many commentaries. I have read the original Secret Doctrine and the original letters. And my way of studying is to study the original and then to contemplate on that. So, what you understand, it is basically your own growth, I would say. So, whatever is my understanding, of course, I do refer the books here and there, but I have not done a study of any of other commentaries. So, if you would like to
No,
share.
of course, that is no. I have also not read because that book is not in print, and then there was only one copy in the library, and it has been taken here. So, no, no, obviously your method is the supposed to be the method, which is the method of Gyan Yoga, and you're supposed to do exactly what you are saying, which is read, contemplate, internalize, develop the ideas from within, which is what you are doing, and which is the correct, which is approach. But what happened? What I get the impression, because I have been watching these other sort of series of the master's letters done by somebody called Tony Hunt, I think his name is. Terry Hunt. Terry Hunt is a British theosophist, and he has done all this commentary research also. So when he does some of the letters, then there's some little more, I get little more detailed data, something more that's happening because it's a very complex thing that was going on at that time with so many people, so many emotions, so many pushes, pulls, and all. So in a way, one understands a few small 1 or 2 lines which we may not understand it actually as it was meant was interpreted nicely by Joyman. So I found that way it's good to sort of have that because it also sort of for example when we read about Hirsch Michael, we are going to read only on Google or Theosophy Wiki. That's our source of information. So, just like that, Joy Mill's reading would be another additional sort of source of information because all what she has written is not on Theosophy Wiki. That's how I mean that it does become useful to just to get a little more data on what else going on.
Definitely. And Joy Mills was very knowledgeable. Her books are fantastic, whatever her articles and books are. No doubt about it. And it does throw a great light on the subject that she writes. So, yes, in that sense, it is useful for people and they should study, read it.
Actually, there's another sort of series which William Cohen Judge has written, which is letters that letters that I found useful or letters that I like or something like that. They're these thin pamphlets which William Cohen Judge has done, which is actually also a very good way to process these letters and see which letters you like the best.
Right.
He selected a few letters. And these are the letters that has brought change in me. So that kind of also is a good approach towards because of course a lot is happening there which is not very meaningful for us to know. Like how if you see that Murad C. Beg, what a confused life he had and what all he did from becoming a Christian into a Muslim and back to Christian and then back to Muslim and then finally committed suicide and destroyed his life.
Correct.
All that, I mean, you feel like, okay, what is this? I mean, what can one really, how much can you sort of, it doesn't, after a point, it's only entertainment. It is not like anything very useful for you other than, okay, don't do these things. But nobody will be so nuts to change religions and do so many things. I mean, we do 1 or 2 things. We may go to listen to some other speakers or read other books, but one won't entirely do things like that. So, yeah, there's so much in that which is not useful, but there's lots in it which is very useful. So, I found William Conchard's way of looking at it that letters that have helped me That is the name of the pamphlet. It's got a couple of pamphlets, not one. So he selected these letters, and they used to be in print by this ULT Lodge in Mumbai. I don't think the ULT Lodge in Mumbai operates anymore.
United Lodge of Philosophers. Yes.
One more thing, in the letter number 129, the doubt in our ES members, it has been cleared. We used to get, how did we get these portraits of Mahatmas? So we got the answer from the Mahatma letter 129. Thank you for that.
Yes, you're most welcome. And one should understand that these portraits, they must not be shared like that or spoken of like that. They have been given to this esoteric school of wisdom, and those portraits, they carry a certain magnetism. So just by having any picture, it doesn't have the same effect. In fact, the lesser we speak about these things, the better it is. They are there for our contemplation, to aid in our own growth, in our own magnetism. So reading the letters, of course, everyone has a different way how they want to study, whether they want to study from different sources or the originals. That is all right. Whatever helps you, you should go ahead with that and try to clear your doubts first within yourself, and if not, then by discussing with other people.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Most welcome.
Mostly, like what I think in this Vibhaji is that I never try to attract the master's attention, because I think I'm so down below, I'm not ready for it. So I never do anything to attract their attention. That's one thing I never do. And nor do I like pray or think in that way about that matter. But I just like seeing their images. And a long time before, the TS and Adyar used to print these images, proper big size prints. Nowadays, they don't seem to be doing it. And people used to buy those prints.
Okay.
KH and Master M's prints were big. They were big. I have seen them.
Oh.
And that time, I had not started becoming such a big follower of Theosophy, so I didn't buy it then, so I don't have them.
Okay. Okay. But Master says that his personality can hardly be reached. So, right?
I always think I'm too down. I must not attract their attention and disturb their work. That's how I always think. I think till the end of my life, I will think like that. I'll not disturb their work by attracting their attention. So that's how I always think, because I think I'm just so still very long way to advance. So I think we can end now. And I request Sister Mitali to give the closing prayer, please. Thank you.
Namaste to all. Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityurmang amrutangamaya sarve bhavantu sukhinah sarve santu niramaya sarve bhadrani pashyantu na kaschid dukhabhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Good night and thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.